Hi, I'm Bill from CJ Pony Parts. Overall, our 68 GT500 is a nice driver, so we've done some basic work on it just to make the car more reliable and safe to drive. Recently, we rebuilt our power steering control valve, which cleaned up a lot of the issues with our steering, but there's still a lot of play which we determined is a bad steering box. So today we're going to show you how to replace the steering box on your 68 through 70 Mustang using our 68 GT500. The box we chose is from Flaming River, and it's a brand new box, not a rebuild like many of the units that are on the market currently. It features a 1 1/8 sector shaft and a 16:1 ratio. It will work with your 68 through 70 Mustang with manual or power steering. This will be a direct replacement for the factory box, and we're going to show you how to install it. For this installation, let a lift or a jack and jack stands, 3/8 ratchet, 3/8 socket, 7/16 socket, 1/2-inch socket, a couple of extensions, a 1/2-inch ratchet, a 5/8 socket, a 3/4 socket, a 32mm socket, a short extension, 7/16 wrench, 9/16 wrench, a puller, pry bar, and a flashlight. The first step of the installation is going to be to determine what you need to remove to get to the steering box itself. Depending on engine, transmission, and exhaust options will depend on what you have to remove. In the case of our GT500, it's obviously a 428, big block in there, so we had to remove just the exhaust system. We should clear the stock manifold. If you have aftermarket headers or other things, you'll have to determine what you have to remove to get to the steering box. Once the exhaust is out of the way, we're going to move on to disconnecting the slave cylinder and a couple other bolts to get to the box itself. We're going to start by disconnecting the slave cylinder from the bracket. We're going to remove this bolt here on top of the slave cylinder bracket. It's not to remove it, but by removing this, it allows us to get easier access to the nut for our pitman arm, and also we'll probably have to use a puller to get the pitman arm off. The room now, we get to the bolt here that holds on the pitman arm, the box. We're going to use a puller now, disconnect the pitman arm from the box. Before we remove the box from the frame rail, the last thing you want to separate is the rag joint going to your steering column. To do that, loosen that bolt right there, the 12-point bolt. That'll separate our rag joint from the box. On the outside of the frame rail, these 3 bolts here are what hold the box to the frame rail itself. More than likely to get the box out, you are going to have to disconnect the steering column, which we'll do next. We're going to take these bolts out first. We've got to remove the steering column to give us enough room to separate the box from the column so we can get it out of the car. To do that, there's 2 nuts and 2 bolts underneath here that we have to remove to loosen it, and you remove the nut that holds the collar to the firewall, and I'll also pull the column back and give us the space that we need. Now, the last step is to remove all the bolts on the plate on the firewall. Now we can slide everything back. Column pushed back. Now we can separate the box from the rag joint. And work it out. Once you have the old box out, it's not a bad idea to pull off the rag joint, take a look at it, see if it's damaged at all. In the case of ours, we're trying to keep this car mostly original. The rubber is in very good shape. There's no dry rotting or cracking. This is fine. We're going to put it back on the car. Now put the new box up into place. Before you begin installation of your new Flaming River steering box, make sure it is centered. There's detailed instructions including on centering it. If it has paint on it, that means they did pre-center it. It's still not a bad idea to double check. but once you have the paint, you should be okay. Basically slide this up the same way the other one came off. Now I'll grab the hardware. Let's get them all started loosely at first. Once they're all started, you can tighten them down. We'll start by putting the bolt in on the column side of the rag joint. At this point, you'll want somebody in the car to hold the column for you because you will have to slide it forward to connect it to the steering box. Yeah, make sure the steering wheel is straight before you do this part, because we have the box centered, so if the steering wheel is not straight, it's not going to line up properly. The rag joint now attached to our steering box, we can reinstall the retaining bolt. There's a little groove actually in the spline part of the steering box itself. If you don't have this lined up with the groove, the bolt won't go in. So if it is tight, just move it back and forth until you have it right in that groove. And also don't forget to make sure you tighten up the other side where the rag joint goes to the column. Now we're going to reconnect our pitman arm and our slave cylinder. What to do, make sure on the pitman arm there's larger splines on the box itself. Just make sure they're lined up with the larger splines on the pitman arm. Okay, now we can reinstall the slave cylinder onto the bracket. We're going to reinstall the bolt and the nut and hardware we removed to get access to the nut on the pitman arm. I'm going to put the column back up into place. Don't forget, if you unplug the column to get it out, plug it back in. And your installation is finished. Our new Flaming River steering box is going to have our 68 GT500 steering like it should, to make the car a lot safer and more enjoyable to drive. On installation like this, because you're messing with the steering system, you will want to get on alignment when the installation is finished. Overall, the install is not too bad. Depending on your engine, transmission, and exhaust options and how hard it is to get the steering box out, figure between 3 to 6 hours total for the installation and be back on the road in no time.